let's go watch it in 2D. No, let's go watch it in 3D. But if we watch it in 3D, then is it worth the cost?
Megalodon.
Massive prehistoric killer machine.
What you discovered is bigger than we ever thought possible. I'm gonna make this thing bleed. Hell yeah.
The Meg, rated PG-13.
Welcome to 3D or 2D. This is Jake Jarvis. This episode, we're reviewing The Meg. Now on to the 3D. The underwater photography is pretty murky for most of the film, making the 3D effects almost non-existent for long stretches of the movie. There's lots of depth, going back, but there's very little done with it. I mean, the camera angles aren't used to maximize the depth. There's some few scenes here with some nice pop-outs. And there was an attempt to do one, the beach attack scene, that if they had executed it, it would have been awesome. But they didn't execute it very well, and it didn't pop. There were some water bubbles that looked really nice, but that's not worth the extra expense of a 3D ticket. Final verdict: weak 3D, 2D recommended only. If you're gonna see this, 2D. Don't spend the bucks for the 3D.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
This podcast is brought to you by 3D Wiggle. With 3D Wiggle software, you can impress your family and friends with 3D gifts and videos. To find out more information, please click on the link in the description for 20% off coupon as well. This podcast is also brought to you by Patreon. With Patreon, you can become a patron and get this podcast commercial free and get many more benefits. Please click on the description again to get more information. Now, back to the show.
Every couple of years, Hollywood unleashes yet another shark movie, usually in August. They tend to be silly like Jaws 3D or Deep Blue Sea, or they tend to be suspenseful like Jaws or The Shallows. The problem with The Meg, it can't decide which lane it's in, and it fails to be silly or suspenseful. This movie had all the ingredients to be a hybrid of the two shark film tropes, but it failed in its delivery beyond some very good jump scares. And this is probably because they chose to go with a PG-13 rating. Yeah, for a shark movie, there's very little gore. The closest thing you'll get to a gory attack, and it ironically is one of the most emotional scenes in the entire film, is when our heroes come across a wrecked fishing boat that was finning sharks. So if you're not familiar with shark fin soup and the controversy, you might want to Google that to understand what's going on in that scene if you're not already familiar. And it didn't really help. There wasn't really any chemistry between any of the characters or the actors, except for the hostility between Jason Statham's Jonas Taylor character and the actor Robert Taylor playing Dr. Heller. You really believed those guys were formerly best friends who now hate each other. And of course that characterization was pretty much just to fuel character heroics and such. There's not a whole lot of suspense in this movie. You'll figure out in 5 minutes who's gonna live and who's gonna die. There's not really any surprises. And I don't have to tell you about the dog Pippin. You know what happens to the dog Pippin. Nothing. And Paige Kennedy plays a DJ, a character who's a parrot away from being LL Cool J's character in Deep Blue Sea. And Bing Bing Lee plays a kick-ass single mom scientist who flirts with Jason Statham and has to be rescued a few times. Pretty much everybody in this movie's plot chum. They move the story forward, or they exist to be attacked by the shark. Yeah, there's tons of shark movies. There's several that are in 3D, like Jaws 3D, Shark Night. You can find a foreign copy of that. Are available in home video. I recommend any of those pretty much over this. I mean, heck, I recommend watching Sharknado over this. I just was very disappointed. Final verdict, 5 out of 10. And that's it for this episode of 3D or 2D. Hope to hear from you soon. Bye.
Alright, before this podcast ends, I want to give a thank you to my patrons. Right now, we have one patron, which is David from Spain, and I want to thank you for your financial support to help making this possible. If you want your name to be called out and your location, please become a patron on Patreon. Our link should be in the description, or just look for us, 3D or 2D, on Patreon, and you get plenty of benefits. So again, thank you, David from Spain, and I hope to have many more Patreon patrons with us soon. Thanks again, David. Alright, so that's going to be it for this podcast.
We now have a Patreon, and the link is in the description. Thanks for watching.
And we are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, little bit everywhere. Just look for us, 3D or 2D. And of course, review us on iTunes. And if you want to write us a letter, our email address is email3dortwo d@gmail.com. So that's going to be it. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everyone.